Hello, I'm your host, Kelly Eckhart, and welcome to The Future Edit. Hello and welcome back to The Future Edit. I'm your host, Kelly Eckhart, and today I'm super excited to talk with Amanda Barnett. She has a business, Barney and Flow, and I've been following her recently and super intrigued by her knowledge of human design, meditation, anything that has to do with your health, breath work, astrocartography, variables. We're all going to talk about it today. And so thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you taking the time. And so let's start off with you introducing yourself and giving a bit of your background.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm really grateful to be here. My background is quite varied. You would almost think that I'm a manifesting generator, but I'm not. I'm a generator. I started out working in football, actually, and then I worked in film for 14 years, and I wore lots of different hats in the film industry, and I was living in LA, and I'd been there for 14 years, and I was just starting to feel like I need to leave here, and I'm ready to go, and I don't know where I want to go, and I've always just kind of moved someplace without ever living there, like 6 times in my life, which is not a good thing for a 2-4 profile. You're not really supposed to do that. I've learned now. I just leap. And so I moved to Portland, Oregon and lived there for 6 years. But the whole time, even when I was working in film, even when I was in college in my 20s, I'm almost 42 now, I was obsessed with all things wellness. And I started out studying nutrition because that was really like, I grew up in Texas and there wasn't a lot of access to all the woo world of things that there are out there at the time. And so I was really studying nutrition a lot. And then when I got to LA, it was just like a whole world opened up for me. And I was like, give me all the things. And I became a Reiki practitioner and I studied meditation. And I was just like always grasping at something and trying something new and going to some event or getting some new certification that I was excited about testing, you know?
Yeah. That
kind of like a little bit of that mentality of like trying to find the answers outside of yourself all the time and just like grasping at things. Like I always say, it's part of why I created the collective, because I'm such a hoarder of information, but I think we can get into the place of just like taking in and not really like integrating the things or like finding the lesson within, you know? And when I left LA and moved to Portland, I really kind of like shifted things. So whereas like film work was like on the front burner when I was in LA and I was kind of like always studying things and like doing Reiki on the side, you know, on the back burner, I kind of shifted and started really focusing on wellness and like moved film to the back burner and still did it because I love it. And, but it was just for fun as opposed to like my career. And I started to kind of shift into a career in wellness. And I really was focused on meditation, which in LA, you had all these places popping up that were like meditation places, you know, and they were trying to do that in Portland. So I was like leading meditation at some places that were just focused on meditation, but it wasn't really taking off in the same way. And so I got certified to teach yoga because I was like, well, everybody, like lots of people do yoga and maybe I can just like sneak shit in like meditation and things that I want to really talk about in my yoga class and like convert them a little bit, you know. And somewhere in that journey, I was studying breath work and I was going back and forth between LA studying and getting certified. And I heard about human design from like a few people. And I ordered a book because that's what I do. I have like just a massive library. And I sat down and I started piecing my own chart together. And I was never really into astrology. Like, I mean, I'm a Scorpio sun and I identify with that. I think I had my Cancer rising and my Aries moon backwards for like 15 years. I was reading the wrong thing. I obviously like was not that into it. I would like read the relation, you know, every time you start dating someone and you're like, what's our like vibe together? That kind of stuff. But I wasn't that into it. But when I sat down and did my human design and I started really pulling gates and like piecing things together, it felt like so much permission, like so much like, oh, wow, like this is me. Like I see this in me. And I see also like all of these clear shadows and low vibrations that I've been operating at, and how I can kind of try to transmute those into high vibrations. It just felt like something I could do. Whereas astrology kind of at the time, and I had a very limited knowledge of astrology, felt kind of like, this is what's happening to you. Deal with it in whatever way that you want to deal with it. And that's not the case. Like the more that I've studied human design has kind of brought me around to astrology and like studying it in a different way, because then I started studying astrocartography. And I think with that, when I moved to Portland, I was 35. And I was kind of having like an early midlife crisis of like, I don't know what I want to do. I don't want to be here. I don't know where, but I'm going to move again. And like, I feel like I want to go somewhere smaller. And I'd never been there. And I really thought it was much smaller than it actually was. Like when I got into town, I was like, wow, this is the city still. Like it just feels like, you know, when you live in LA, you live in like your pocket of LA. So it just kind of still felt like the same to me in a lot of ways, with just a little bit less traffic. And I had such a hard time. And I kept like, you know, before I moved there, everybody was like, get a job before you go, like find a place to live before you go. And I was like, whatever, like I always just jump and it works itself out fine. And it did. Like I found a place to live. But I mean, I bartended at a poker club for like 6 months because I couldn't find a job anywhere. I mean, it was just like, it was so challenging, and I wasn't finding community easily. And I kept kind of chalking it up to like, well, like I'm 35 and like moving somewhere when you're older is harder, and people are already kind of in their community pockets. And I eventually did like find good work and find programs and find places to live and amazing community, but it was really challenging. And it always kind of felt like there's a heavy vibe here. And I don't know, like everybody loves Portland. It's beautiful, but I feel like just heavy here. And I don't know what that is. And why is that? And so when I heard about astrocartography, it was just like I went down a wormhole, and it was like so much validation for how I had been feeling there. And just on the West Coast in general, like the lines that I have on the West Coast are obviously go up and down the West Coast, but in Portland, I was on a cross that's just, and we can talk about that when we get into astrocartography, that's just like particularly challenging. And it just gave me like a reason to be like, well, I'm going to move again, because I want to, you know, when I moved to Portland, I was like, I am not moving again. This is it. I'm in my late 30s. I'm going to put down some roots. I'm going to stop like being a wandering person. And then it was like, I don't think it's the right place for me to stay. So I've actually been wandering for a year. Okay. Trying to find where I want to go next. Which is really interesting too, because like I said, I've just like kind of gotten more into astrology since studying human design and astrocartography. And I've started studying timing things and like different like secondary professions and things, because I just am curious about, more of the secondary progressions, because it's more of like phases that you're going through. And so last night I was studying stuff and I was looking some stuff up in my chart, and it's like, according to where your secondary moon is progressing is kind of like the theme of your life for like 2.5 years. Okay. Interesting. And I was like, I would bet like dollars to donuts. I've never said that in my life. Dollars. I don't even know where that came from. My moon is in my 4th house of finding home, because I've been like, I left Portland almost exactly a year ago, and I've been traveling, and I'm actually back in Texas right now, which I grew up in Texas and like couldn't wait to get out. I was like, I would never move back to Texas. And now I'm like, maybe. And my moon is in my 4th house of finding home. So I'm like totally in this phase right now of trying to find my place, which is really interesting. Yeah. I'm a true believer that there is a place for everyone, because it's the same. It was quite interesting when I found out about astrocartography. I had done a interview with Micah Gabriella. She does human design.
we were just talking about charts and stuff. And she's like, you should really check into this because, I've moved around a lot. I lived in LA as well for a little while. And I just keep thinking like, I'm here in this place for a while, but I don't feel like it's forever because it's the same. The heaviness, I feel it's off. It's just off a bit. And everyone's like, oh, but I love it here. It's so great. Why wouldn't you love it? And I'm like, I don't know, but it's maybe it's okay for now, but it's not going to be forever. And I think this astrocartography is so true for a lot of people because then, like you said, it validates your feelings towards why you're feeling this way. I'm a feeler. Everything in my chart and human design is all about feeling stuff. And if I don't feel right, and I literally have felt this unease for 3 years now, and I'm, you work through it and you do all the stuff, but still you're like, how long are you going to put up with this feeling this shit for not forever,
Yeah.
It's like,
yeah. And you're on the same line. Well, I was on 2 lines in the West Coast, but you're on the same line I was on. Exactly. Like you're on a Neptune descending line. So
yeah, it's so interesting. Well, since we're talking about lines, let's talk about astrocartography and then we'll go into more about how it all kind of blends in with human design and stuff. So explain what astrocartography is, because when I was trying to explain it to friends the other day, I clearly didn't explain it right because they were still like, huh?
Yeah. So it was kind of, yeah. It was pretty much developed in the 70s, I think, by Jim Lewis. He's kind of like the father of astrocartography. And I think it's interesting, like the 2 things that I am into are kind of newer things, like human design was channeled in the 80s and astrocartography in the 70s, but they both like relate back to these like ancient sciences. And so it's basically like just where the planets were in the world when you were born, like a snapshot of where they all were. And so, they're always going to be in the same place. And you can like drag your map over Europe and look at where they were in Europe, or drag your map over Australia and look at where they were there. But they're always going to have been in the same place. And you're going to have longitudinal, like angle lines. They're not all longitudinal. Some of them are your ascending and descending. Yeah. Or your midheaven and your IC, which are longitudinal, that are like the most powerful lines. So like when I said I lived on I lived on Neptune and Mars on the West Coast. Those are the 2 lines longitudinally that I had. If you're like, there's something called the Orb of Influence, and there's a big debate over what that actually is. And I'm still kind of discerning how I personally feel about it. Jim Lewis was like 700 miles, and that feels like, what the fuck? Like there's so many, like you're always everything. Like it's just, and I think too, it's because when I first started studying astrocartography, I was like, man, all my good lines are like in Russia and places that I would like not live, which is kind of funny that I like now do this for a living. But I do have some positive lines in places. So those lines, your ascending and descending, your Imcoli and your midheaven, are going to be the strongest influence. If you have one of those lines, I would say within 300 miles of where you are, you're going to be feeling that energy. I think after like 300 and 350 miles, it's starting to get pretty diffuse. Like, yeah, it's still there, but it's not like you're not swimming in that energy in the same way that you are if it's like within 300 to 400 miles. And then you have crossings, which when 2 lines cross, they like send a band around the world. So like in Portland, even though I was on a Mars Neptune situation in Los Angeles, I was closer to those lines in Portland and I was next to a cross. So it's like they just like blasted themselves, like, like super potent energy. But like if you're like right now where I am in Texas, I'm about 500 miles from a Saturn line and a Jupiter line, and I don't really feel like I'm getting a lot of that energy. So then I check the place that I'm at to see like what latitudinal kind of crossing I'm on, and I'm actually on a Venus Jupiter crossing, which feels really lovely.
Yeah.
You, for me, I looked at Frankfurt today just to see like what energy I would be connecting with. And it's also a Venus Jupiter cross. So I'm connecting to like the same energy I'm at here to you there, which I think is fascinating.
Oh, that's really cool. It's interesting. So when I was looking up, so I did my daughter's and my husband's. So yeah, what happens if basically the place that you're kind of looking, where you live or the place you're looking to move in the future, there's literally no lines around you? Does that just mean, oh, this is pretty good?
Yeah, it means like you're not really being supported or challenged. You know, if you're like close to a Jupiter line or a Venus line, you're most likely feeling like pretty supported by that energy. And you know, we can get into this, like if you're just going to visit somewhere, if you're going on vacation, pretty much everybody is going to feel good in a Venus, Jupiter, Sun energy. If you're moving somewhere, then you need to think about how that actually is in your chart. Because the relationships in your chart, like we talked about when I did your reading, I said, like, I really had a hard time in Portland, partially because I felt like I was on a Neptune descending line, and it was like people couldn't see my business clearly. Like I was growing, but I mean, I was growing at like a snail's pace. It was like I couldn't quite get myself out there. Yeah. And for me personally, my Neptune is square my midheaven, which is career. So not only is that just like kind of a veil over you in general for people to like see you clearly, but then in my personal chart, it's like in an uncomfortable relationship with my career sector. So that's adding to that. Yeah. So when we're relocating somewhere, we want to like pay attention to our own personal charts. But if you're in like I am now, like I'm not really picking up on any angular lines, it just means like I'm not getting that boost and I'm not like amplifying that energy in my life, but I'm also like not being challenged by something. But like I said, if you're looking at, and what you're talking about is pulling it up on astro.com, and everybody can do that themselves. And I have a workshop also if you need assistance, like figuring out how to do it. Yeah. But you can click on the AstroClick travel and like pull up your own chart. So when you say there's nothing there for her, if you click on Frankfurt, something will pop up that will be a crossing, and that energy will be like a third of the influence of an angular line. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. It was interesting that the latitude lines, my husband had them everywhere, and I'm all over the place like this, which I found quite interesting. That's also our personalities. Like, I'm like this and he's like, ooh, do, 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 do. It's so funny. This astrocartography thing was quite eye-opening for me. I really find, do you feel that it's a good idea for people to kind of live by it, or do you think it's like take some of that information that you can gain from it and then kind of leave what doesn't suit you? Or do you think people should really, really look into this before they're deciding to move? Or because travel, like you said, you know, everyone feels pretty good, but moving is a very big decision, right? Yeah, I do. And here's what I'll say. I mean, if you're thinking about going on vacation, if you're thinking about going on a family vacation and you're trying to decide between going to Greece and going to Australia, and you look it up and Australia's on your Mars IC line, which is like fighting in your family, and Greece is on your Venus line, then I would be like, probably go to Greece, you know? But I mean, also like if you're like, but I always wanted to visit Australia and now this makes me feel like I can't go visit there. That's, just like pay attention and you try to offset it. And if you're going with your family and it's your Mars IC, then you be mindful of the fact that there might be some like fiery disagreements there between you, you know? If you're going to move somewhere, like I wish I'd known this before I relocated to Portland. And I don't know that it would have changed my mind, but it would have like brought awareness. And so I'll tell you like a little bit of my journey through my astrocartography. Like I was born in Texas. I'm not really on any line here. So I'm not, the where you're born is kind of like imprinting that energy on you. Like you were born near a sun line. You're kind of carrying that energy with you everywhere you go.
Yeah.
I don't have that. And then I moved a couple other places, which I don't even know if I've looked at that. And I do recommend, like, when you start getting into this, look at all the places you've lived and traveled and that energy, and then see how you felt in those places. Because every time I'm doing an astrocartography reading and someone's like, I felt like a fucking crazy person in Iceland, and we look it up and there's like 5 lines there and like a Uranus line. And it's just like, they were like, I just wanted to like go in my house and like bury my head, you know? It's interesting to like applicably look at it from your perspective. Like, how did that line feel to you? Because it's going to be different for everybody. So that's first and foremost. But when I moved from Texas to Los Angeles, I was traveling along a local space sun line. So we talked about some local space, which is different than astrocartography. It's like the direction that you're traveling, and has mostly to do with like your local community and what you can strengthen there, that what you want to call out and how you can strengthen that energy and like keep greasing that groove, as opposed to like greasing a groove that's like working against you.
Yeah.
So on local space, I was traveling along my sun line. I was like 21, and moving to LA was huge in finding myself. And like, I always felt like kind of a black sheep in Texas, and like, these people don't get me. And I don't, you know, no one, I don't even like, I was kind of a chameleon, and I would just kind of like fit in wherever I needed to fit in. When I moved to LA, like that travel along my sun line really put me in a place of like figuring out who I was and my own personal identity. And that's totally sun energy.
Yeah.
I was living on this Mars-Neptune lines combo. When you have 2 lines close together, they're kind of creating their own mushy energy. That was challenging. In some ways, Mars, you would think, would be supportive for me. I have some challenging squares, but like, I'm a Scorpio sun and I'm an Aries moon, and that's like Mars energy, you know. But I had a lot of like health issues with like heat. Like I always had, like I would go to acupuncture and there would be like liver heat and like internal heat in my body. And that's like a Mars thing.
Interesting.
If I had known then that I was living in that energy, I would have worked more to make friends with my masculine Mars energy, to like do kickboxing or something that like got that energy out of my body. I would have done more stuff with stamina work to like move it so that it didn't work against me. I would have tried to balance that Neptune descending so that it wasn't maybe creating this kind of illusion where people couldn't really kind of see me clearly. I would have done things to counter it and to support myself. Yeah. And then I moved from LA to Portland along a Saturn local space, which makes sense because Portland is the hardest place I've ever moved to in my life, as far as like making friends and community and finding work. And like I said, eventually it all works out, but that first year was really hard. And I think that had to do with like moving on that Saturn line. And I was on a Mars Neptune cross. And I'm like pretty open about the story always, because I think it's interesting. And this is not to say this is going to happen to you if you live on a Mars line, but I was physically attacked in Portland by a stranger. And it like turned into this whole thing where like after it happened and they got out of jail, like they started stalking me. I mean, it was just like one of those like Lifetime movie moments where you're like, how is this happening in my life? And I think not only was I living on this Mars-Neptune cross where it's like people aren't seeing me clearly and maybe projecting some shit onto me, and I'm in this kind of aggressive Mars energy, but the place I was attacked was on a Mars local space line that I had been I just traveled that line all the time to work, back and forth, greasing this Mars energy and like amplifying it. Yeah. Again, does that mean I wouldn't move to Portland? I don't know. But would I have done things to like balance that and like bring awareness to it and, you know, create little Venus altars and like do some boxing classes and like things to just bring some balance? Definitely. So because I discovered astrocartography after all of that had happened, and I looked it up and then looked it up again and found Mars on my local space, I was like, holy shit. I mean, it was just like my fucking brain exploded.
Why didn't I know this? Exactly.
Yeah. And I was reading Jim Lewis's book, and it was literally like, this is a place you could be attacked. And it's like, that's not going to happen to everybody. Like, if you're living on a Mars line, don't think that I'm saying that. But I am saying, what's your relationship to that energy in your chart? What's your relationship to that planetary archetype? What's your relationship to the masculine? Are you doing things to like balance that energy and bring in Venusian energy?
Yeah.
Are you channeling that energy in some way? Like, all of those things are important, I think.
Completely. Because you were saying in your local space, if you do have these very strong lines, is it just about walking a different way to work? Or, you know, you said also feng shui comes into a lot in your home. You can, place things in different areas of your house. And this all brings in energy, right? Do you also work with crystals? Do you have crystals in certain places? Do you carry them with you for energy and things?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I even have like all the days on my Instagram of like how you can like lean into Moon Day and Mars Day wearing crystals and colors and things. I'm totally into all of that stuff. And it's like endless threads that you can pull, but the local space is interesting. Like if you're, if I had known that I was greasing this Mars line, if I had known about astrocartography and I could have moved, or I probably wouldn't have changed where I was working, but if I could have moved somewhere else where I was greasing a different line, I probably would have, or, paying attention to things like, where do you go to the grocery store every day and what energy is that amplifying? Where do you go to the gym every day? If you're like, life feels really hard right now and I don't know why, and you look it up and you're like, wow, every time I go to the coffee shop every morning, I'm traveling on a Saturn line, that may be something that you can work with to support yourself in a different way. Choose a different coffee shop on your Venus line, or something that on Jupiter that feels easier for you. And there's a whole thing about feng shui, and like you can lay a local space map over your floor plan of your house and see like where you have things placed. There are objects that are like not happy in certain locations. Mm-hmm. And ways that you can like build altars, or like put like a bunch of books. Like I keep my human design books in my Jupiter sector, that's like my business and my higher knowledge, and like places where I'm inviting expansion. Yeah. So there's always things you can do like that. And that's what I think is most important, is like, how can we utilize it in the ways that we can utilize it and not feel hindered by it? Because I think even when I first learned my astrocartography and I couldn't really find any, like all the places I had thought about moving to were not places that had positive lines for me. I felt kind of bummed. Like I was like, but that's where I wanted to go. And now you're telling me I'm not supposed to go there. It should be like an invitation to explore. And I always say, like, do some astro traveling. And also, like I said, go back and look at the places that you have traveled to and how you felt in those places. Yeah. Because I've done that, gone back and looked at places I vacationed, even in Spain and things, and been like, oh, well, that's on my Saturn line. No wonder that felt like really heavy when I was coming back from there, or whatever. Or I felt like all of this responsibility. Like I couldn't, like when I went there, I was on vacation, but I kept worrying about money and stuff back home and like not being able to enjoy it, and it's on my Saturn line. So it's just like things like that you can look at to experiment and see how it feels for you. That being said, it's all like we do what we can, even in human design, it's like generators are meant to follow their joy all the time. Well, sometimes we have to do shit we don't like, It's true, I know. There's just like adulting things, or we can't afford to leave our job right now, and we have to find the ways that we can support ourselves, that we can lean into our energetic gifts, that we can lean into the high vibrations, that we can focus on the things that we love about something, so it's all ways that we can just enhance our life.
Yeah, that's a really important point that you made, because a lot of times, I'm in a position at the moment where I'm quite lucky to be able to go on this spiritual journey, just because my German isn't great enough to work full time at the moment. So luckily, I have a husband that can do this, but it's also sometimes I feel a little bit like it's almost like luxury or only for people that can actually afford to take the time to travel and go to these things. So doing what you can within your space or within your community or within yourself, that's all you need to do. That is okay. You don't have to, like people said, you don't have to travel halfway across the world to go to a meditation retreat. You can do everything right here. And also with human design, it's something to explore, but also have fun with it and kind of figure out what's right for you. And it doesn't have to be so serious, and you don't have to do it this way and this way. It's all self exploration. Correct?
Yes,
exactly. I appreciate that point.
I totally agree with that. I think it's so important to think about, like, I don't think we think about that a lot, the privilege that a lot of us have to have the time to explore these things. That being said, I think that we can all find 5 minutes in our day to look at something, or to take a breath or to lean into something. There's always ways, like you said, you don't have to travel all the way around the world. That's one of the beautiful things about astrocartography, is that you can channel the support of a place from your couch. Yeah. So like I have pictures of Ethiopia and I listen to Ethiopian jazz because that's in a supportive place for me. Cool. When I traveled through New Mexico, I picked up a bunch of art there to bring with me and things that like channel that energy. I watched a movie on Kyrgyzstan. Why not?
Exactly. And you're learning something too.
I learned something new, and I like connected to the energy of that place. I learned all about falconry, and it's beautiful. Like it connects me to places that I wouldn't have necessarily thought about visiting. And there's always ways to support yourself. I think that's the coolest thing, is like we have this macrocosm of astrocartography, which is like, oh, it'd be great to live on my Jupiter line or my Venus line. And then we have this microcosm of local space where it's like, okay, I might not be able to move right now, but how can I like bring that energy into my community? And then you take it down even smaller to like astrological Feng Shui, and you're like, how can I build a Venus altar in this corner, to amplify that energy or whatever. I also think it's important to note there are no bad lines. Like, while that was my experience with Mars and Neptune, someone else lives on a Neptune line and becomes a famous musician. It's all in what you need. And I've done readings, everybody seems to want to go to like Venus, Jupiter, sun lines, moon node lines, even like your moon node lines can be like pull you towards your north node, which is like the direction that we want to go in this life. But I've also done readings with people who've lived on their Venus Jupiter lines for 30 years and they're having trouble getting motivated. And that's Mars. Or they can't like get any discipline to like get shit done. And that's Saturn. So then you're talking about, where are your Mars and Saturn lines, and how can we pull that energy in to this? Like Venus and Jupiter can be beautiful, but you can like sit back a little bit and be like, I don't have to do anything, because it just feels really good and everything's easy, and I like don't need to do any of that work stuff, So then if you're trying to like create a course or something and you can't find the motivation, then I was like, told this person, like they were already actually traveling to a Saturn line in Sedona, to see how they felt there, and like grease those grooves in their local space, and like find a coffee shop on their Saturn line so that they can sit down and focus, so it's all in what we need in the moment.
And so how does astrocartography coincide or work with human design? Because does this also have a lot to do with your profile and kind of your archetype and things of how you would function within the lines and things, or is it completely a separate thing that you have to look at them completely separate?
It's pretty separate. I mean, if you're looking at where a gate is placed in your chart and you have a gate in your Neptune and your Neptune is square your midheaven, then those energies are going to like be challenging if you're like living on that line. But the ways that I usually, when I'm doing readings, tie in human design is through environment. Because that has the most to do with location and your environment arrow, as far as like what serves you. Again, like I'm a quad left, so I'm all about like routine and having things, and here I am wandering for a year, so we do what we do,
Exactly.
It's like But like knowing your human design environment is really helpful as well, because it's really about like what nourishes you. And it was kind of the same with that one. When I found out my human design environment, I was like, really? I thought I would be like shores or something, you know, like
I thought so too.
This doesn't feel right to me. And it may not be. I mean, that, to be fair, like someone might have like cut the cord and smacked my ass before they wrote down my birth time, and it's a few minutes off. And so I haven't actually done it to see like what a few minutes on either side would be. But the more I got into markets, and I think it's because, I mean, I was a city girl for a long time. I'm just not anymore. Now I'm like, get me to the woods person. But markets is really about specifications. It's really about, what do you like? What are all the things? And I am very specific about what I like and what I want, and like the things like I've dated people that I've been like, I don't know how this is going to work if we live together, because I don't like any of your stuff. You know, like it's like I'm pretty in my environment. I like it the way that I like it. And so that's very true for me. And it may be that I like shores. Like that's what I like, you know, so it feels resonant for me. But yeah, that's pretty funny.
It is, because I'm markets as well, and my husband's kitchen, and it's really interesting because, but the kitchen for him it's literal, because he loves to cook and he loves to be in the kitchen, and both of us together like to entertain a lot, and we're always in the kitchen, which was really quite nice, and that made a lot of sense to him because he's slowly getting into human design, because he feels that there's a little bit more behind it. And he always needs an explanation, why this and why this. He questions everything. And
one line profile.
He's a projector 3-5.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And so I'm generator 3-5 with markets, and which is interesting as well, because he just lets me do the house because he knows he's not going to win, and it's fine. I have a very distinct style. I mean, he likes my style too, but he just says, let's get on with it. And even when I ask him, do you like this? He's like, you're going to buy it anyway. So why are you asking me? I'm like, oh yeah.
Right. I know. I like to think of myself as a compromising person, but when it comes to my home, it is really, that's one of the hardest places. Like when I've lived with people, most of the people I've lived with have like you said, they just deferred to me because I like to think I have pretty good style, or they like my style or whatever, you know. But the last person I was in a relationship, we lived together half time, and that was part of it. I was like, I don't know how to integrate our stuff. Like we are not on the same page at all. I don't know. But we were also both 2 4s, and I think it really worked for us to live together half time and not live together full time. Like 2 4s really need like a lot of time to themselves. And I'm a really big proponent. Like I love doing connection stuff in human design, and I'm such a like big proponent of figuring out what your normal is, you know, like what you're like, there's a lot of society standards of relationships that don't serve every relationship. So I think it's important to figure out how to honor everybody's unique connection, you know.
And human design can help with that, right? With how your connection with someone else.
Yeah. So we're attracted to people who bridge our splits and bridge our gates. Okay. So most of the time, if you looked, like, even if you didn't have connection software, if you just pulled up your chart and your husband's chart and you set them side by side, there's going to be places where you create a full channel. Like each of you have a gate on one side. Okay. And I've never done a connections reading. Like I'm a small split. There's a lot of single definitions, but most people I've found, I guess maybe it's about even. I don't know. With people with splits, it typically, like, I've never done a chart where they didn't bridge a split, which is like, I think it's a pretty cool way to think about human design. It's like accounts for attraction. Like we're attracted to people who technically actually do make us more energetically whole, you know? And I don't think we need to like need that or seek that or like need someone else to be more whole, but we do create that together. We create a more energetically whole.
It's nice. Entity. Yeah, it's just nice. Someone just compliments you, right?
Yeah.
It's interesting. I just did a podcast with someone about relationships. It's about, you don't need that person. You're fine on your own. Make sure that you're a whole person, but you enjoy having that person around, and you're choosing every day to have that person around. Mm-hmm. And once you have that, the relationship can be quite fun, because it's not this, oh, I'm married and I've decided to be with this guy forever and now I'm stuck. It's more like, oh, I like him today, so I'm going to keep him here today. You know, and if you don't like him tomorrow, okay, you might not get rid of him, but you might be like, I just don't like him today, but maybe tomorrow will be better. So it's a nice playful kind of thing within relationships, because they're so serious anyways, you know?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. I love what you said earlier about it. It should all be fun. It should all just be like a fun exploration, you know. But one of the coolest things about looking at connections in human design is that there are places where it's called compromise or dominance channels. Ooh. And it's like there are places energetically where one person is supposed to be kind of more in control of that energy. And if you don't allow that, then there's going to be like, so it's interesting to look at a chart and like look for those kind of sticky wicket places. Like the compromise channels are the place where you're going to be like, here we are fighting about this fucking thing again. Like, we're never going to get, that's usually a compromise channel energy. And like, if you know who's dominant in that energy, you can start to be like, it's not personal. Like, this is just an energy thing. Like, I can just be like, this is this person's thing, and I'm just going to like, let it go. Yeah. Do I want to be right, or do I want to be happy, kind of thing, you know? Yeah. So it's really interesting. And, you know, when you're dating someone, you're like connecting to, like, I've had people who are like, well, I'm dating this person from this place, and you're like connecting to the energy that that person is born on, you know, so that's like another way to think about it when you're coming together.
Ooh, that's super interesting. This is why I love human design and birth charts and things, because you can see so much already in how you're going to connect. Yeah, you choose, it's free will, all that stuff, but you know more about that person's design. Then you can also give them a little bit more leeway, or you have a more understanding of where they're coming from. Because a lot of times when you're in a relationship, it's you just don't understand that person because you're not inside their head, right? But if you've had this background of who they are, you're like, oh, well, he's, you know, a reflector and he does this, this, and this, and I'm a generator. Okay, this is how I can make this work, which I find fascinating. It's like therapy before you even go to therapy, you know?
Exactly. I love it so much for that, mainly because my last partner was a projector, and I was like, why are you so lazy? Like, you are so
work 4 hours like, a day.
Get it together. And then like I realized that he was a projector, and I started looking at different things in our chart, and it gave me so much permission to let him be who he is. Yeah. You know, as opposed to being like, why are you not like doing this like I do it? You know, he got to actually like be more himself. And I think that when you see it like written on paper, it becomes, like I said, with the compromise channels, even like it becomes less personal. It's not a personal thing. It's just like, this is how this person's energy operates. This is how this person needs to take in. I love like doing these blueprints for people, because it's all about like how you can support their energy. What is their determination? What is their environment? What do they need? What, you know, if your husband's a projector and you're a generator, it may be nice to sleep apart sometimes and like let him like completely clear his energy out. There's so many ways that like we can support each other. And our kids, like that's the other big thing, you know. Rahu really said human design was for kids, and all of us adults can have like so much fun doing it. But I get so excited when I get to do a kid's chart and like tell a parent, like, this is why this thing is happening. Or like I had one recently where the kid was like struggling with like this kind of like aggressive, competitive feeling like the world is out to get him energy, and he's like 4 and he's on a Pluto descending line. And I was like, there's all this stuff in human design and like in his like Mars energy and his natal chart. Yes. And also it's probably mostly that he's like living on this Pluto line and he's feeling like he's got to like go out and fight a battle every day, you know? Yeah. So it's really interesting. I think it's huge in the ways that we can not only support ourselves, but really like support the people in our lives. as much
Completely.
as possible.
I've been looking into my daughters. I mean, and my daughter, she's 9 and she's already, I mean, she's an old soul. She's been around forever. She's completely intuitive. I know that she's on this spiritual quest already. She'll tell me things. I mean, today she goes to yoga on Wednesdays. And then today she came home and did some weird pose and meditated for 5 minutes. I'm like, so funny. And my husband's like, well, which weird pose did you do? She's like, do you want me to show you? And he's like, yeah. And he was like, wow, I can't do that. It's so funny. But it is really interesting because she is a manifesting generator. And then she's a caves environment. And I mean, and I think she's a 2/4 as well. And so much about her chart really, really resonates. And also that she's this, you know, someone had said, if your kid is someone that has a million ideas and they want to do this and this and this and this and this, let them do that because that is her type. And she is that way. One day she's going to write a movie. Another day she's writing a song. Another day she's, you know, an explorer. And I'm like, oh, wow, this is going to be, you know, it's super exciting, but it's also knowing that she's going to be all over the place. And she will pick something one day, but she might pick 5 million different things that she's going to do. Right.
Yeah.
And
she might do 4 different careers or lots of things at the same time. A lot of manifesting generators like are diagnosed as kids with ADD because they have so much energy, and it's really just like they need to run out that sacral energy. They need to like move and like get it all out every day.
It's interesting because she talks all the time. I mean, she's also 9, and also my husband's family talks all the time, and which is great. And I love it because she has so much energy and it's super, super beautiful. But it's things like reading her chart and things. I think I'll have you read her Human Design because it'd be nice to go really deep into it in the channels and things, because it just helps you also, for me as a mother parent, better. Yeah. Just that I can connect. Oh, well, she's like this. Now I understand, you know, because it's super helpful, all this.
Yeah.
I mean,
I always think for the
go on.
Yeah. I always think for the kids, like knowing their energy type and their strategy and their authority. I mean, even just like knowing that she's a sacral being and that she needs to like listen to those sacral sounds and like helping her to say and instead of like yes ma'am and no ma'am or like whatever. Like we put these like things on kids like don't make that sound, like say yes please or whatever. And it's like those sounds are like how they tune into their intuition. I just think like what a different world we would live in if we all knew this from the start. You know, they get a chance to start now and like have this info and like start to work with their sacral and understand how to listen to their intuition and follow their strategy and their authority to make decisions. That in itself is massive to help them like make the right decisions for themselves. And then, you know, the variables like you're not really supposed to get into until you're like 30, but I always put them in my kids' readings because I'm like, if you've got a caves kid and you can encourage them to build forts or like to sit at the back of the room so they don't feel vulnerable. Yeah, that's great. You know, you don't, if it comes between honoring your determination or environment and hers, honor yours first because it's more important for you right now. But I still think we can like lean into all those things and then understanding the centers for kids and where their openness is and where they're vulnerable and how to empty that energy out every day. Is key. I think the gates and channels are like my jam. That's like what the collective is like. It's like, I just love studying archetypes in general. But for kids, it's like, they may not get into that until they're trying to figure out what they want to do with their life, you know? Yeah. But all these big things, first and foremost, are, I think life-changing if I had known some of these things when I was growing up, you know?
Well, completely. I really think it's quite valuable for parents to check into this. One, because, or some kind of wellness or something along this human design thing to be taught in schools, because the more that they understand themselves and how they interact and learn and get their energy out, you don't have as many depressed kids. You don't have, you know, anger. There's so much you can already, preempt. Oh, that's not the word I'm looking for, but yeah, I mean, really take care of it from the get-go, right?
Yeah.
And it's super important to be super intuitive about your kids and what they need.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, even just learning styles. If you have a quad right kid and you're putting them in the traditional school system and they're trying to learn in this like traditional linear way, it's most likely going to be a problem. Like those are the kids that like need alternative ways of learning. They're taking in information in a completely different way. So yeah, I think it's all really fascinating.
It is very much. I mean, I'm going down the rabbit hole just recently. I think the thing I find is there's so much information. It's trying to kind of soak it all in so it sticks. And because I'm one of those people that wants to know everything, but I don't even know where to start. I'm like, but I want to know this and I want to know this. And some days I'm like, all right, just stop today, let everything soak in and then begin tomorrow. But then this is also why if you want to learn something, you don't want to go deep, then you need to contact someone like yourself that you can, because you're so knowledgeable, they can sit down with you and you can really explain to me and to others what we really need to know and what the important aspects of it. So if you don't want to go so deep. So tell me about your collective and how people can get involved and what's in it and all that good stuff.
So it's funny that you mentioned need, because I'm a need motivation. So my motivation is basically like focusing on what I want to focus on, which is exactly what the collective is.
Amazing.
Like it is a very like dense resource. And I've had people tell me who've taken other human design trainings that it contains more. But that being said, it's like what I want to focus on and what I think is the most helpful and what I think is the most important. And like you, I'm the same as you. Like I tend to go off on a tangent. Like I've been developing this portion within the collective called the meeting ground, which is all about gates and like how to break down the archetypes of your incarnation cross and like all the gates in your chart. And it's been like my baby for a long time, but then I'll be like, well, but I want to like, I hear something and my responding generator self is like, whoa, I really want to go deep with the moon right now. And then all of a sudden I'm going down like a completely different rabbit hole. And I haven't looked at the meeting ground for like 4 months. And that's been what's happening right now. Like, I'm like, I will get back to this. But yeah, the collective is basically my sacred toolbox. It's like all the things that I've found to be most helpful. You know, when I first learned about human design, I was mostly seeing clients for meditation and anxiety and depression and like nutrition stuff and trying to help people just like have a healthier lifestyle. And then I discovered human design and I started like just being like, what's your birth time? I just want to like look up something really quickly and I'd be like, oh my God, you're a projector, you know, or like I would find something out that would help me create a plan for them that was more uniquely specific to their needs, which was how it all started. And then I realized there was no way I was going to be able to see as many clients as I wanted to see, or as I would even need to see to like support the lifestyle that I would want to have, you know, like it was just like, this is an untenable situation. Even as a generator, like I have a lot of projected energy in my chart. And I think that's important to note for anyone. Like a lot of times you find out you're a generator and you're like, oh, I'm supposed to have all this energy all the time. And a lot of people are burnt out from not living their design. And a lot of people have a lot of projected channels in their chart where they have that energy. So it's about finding your unique balance. But so I started creating the collective, and it started out as like breath work and chakra toolboxes and things. And then it started growing into energy type workshops, which I actually now have for free on my website. Like anyone can take their energy type workshop for free. And it just, I wanted to create a space for self-sovereignty, really. Yeah. Like, I feel like there's so much gatekeeping mentality out there and like guru mentality. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with having a guru at all. But I think there's this like putting people on a pedestal of like, this person is going to give me the answers. Yeah. And the thing that I love the most about human design is that you can find the answers yourself. And there is no one better. Like, I love doing readings. I do. I love connecting to people. And I get readings all the time from other people because I want to hear someone else's perspective or like get a different insight or a different way of looking at it. That being said, no one knows my darkest shit and my shadows and my stuff better than I do. Yeah. So if I'm like pulling through my chart and trying to figure out how things are showing up for me, my awareness is going to be more powerful than what anyone else has to share with me. You know, it's all just, a lot of times it's just words. And like, I had so many times in the past where I'd gotten readings and then listened to it and then forgot about it 3 months later and never looked at it again. And I feel like, for me, I go back and study my gates all the time. Like, I read something again about my conscious sun gate and I'm like, oh shit, that's how it's showing up for me now in this moment.
Okay.
It's my life toolbox. You know, this is what I will be studying for the rest of my life, continuing to circle back around, because healing is sporadic and we're always like moving around and picking something up and learning it on a deeper level or from a different perspective or from a different self or moment in our life. And so I really wanted somewhere where people could go and like have that autonomy and have that sovereignty and like look it up themselves. And then 3 months later, look it up again and like learn it from a different place. Also, because I think we're moving into this time in the world where we need that. Like, we need to be our own healers and we need to have our own awareness and we need to know how to take care of ourselves on a physical, mental, and emotional and spiritual level. And I wanted the collective to kind of be that thing for all the things. Like, I've heard so many business people be like, find a niche. I'm not going to find a niche. Like, it's like human design is now the umbrella, but I just did 30 days on the nervous system. Like, because for me, if your nervous system isn't regulated, then you can't hear your intuition. So how are you going to listen to your strategy and your authority if you're stuck in fight, flight, freeze? So I'm always trying to like incorporate and pull threads and layer things in a way where I feel like it's more holistic, I guess, is the way that I think about it. And have it be affordable, because I feel like I've taken so many trainings that were like thousands of dollars and hundreds of dollars that didn't answer the questions I was looking for. And so I wanted to like give a place that answered those questions in a way that was affordable to everybody. I offer, the price itself is affordable, but then I also offer sliding scale for people who are like struggling and need financial assistance right now. Nice. I just wanted it to be a place where I'm not gatekeeping any information. Like, for a long time, it was like you couldn't find anything about your variables. I must have taken 4 different trainings to try to piece together what I share about the variables now, because it was just like, oh, well, you can find out about your energy type and I'll talk to you about this. But if you want to find out these more nuanced pieces, then you need to pay for this reading. That's $400. And it's like, I'm happy to do a reading with people, but I also want you to be able to find it yourself and like look it up yourself. And then if you want to, like, you're not sure your birth time and you want to check 3 minutes on either side and see what resonates with you, then you can look at all the things, it's not just like one. So I really wanted it to just be a space of inclusivity and self-sovereignty and like empowering you to become your own advocate and healer and guide.
That's really beautiful. It's interesting how I found you is Googling variables and different things, because I was having a conversation and it was, do you know this? Do you know this? I'm like, I don't know any of that. I had like a very basic reading or my blueprint done, and that opened the door for me to want to know more. But I was like, I don't know what this is, and I don't know where to look. And when I found you, then I was like hooked. I was like, she has so much information here, and she explains it. You explain it so well, and I was like, this makes complete sense. So thank you for the collective, because that's great. Because for someone like me that is so interested in diving deep, but can't spend 1,200, euros there or whatever, this is a great tool to help yourself, your discovery to yourself, right? Because we all deserve to have the option to dig deeper. A lot of us just don't know where to start. And that's the thing. So what advice do you have then to an individual that wants to dig deeper? They want to dive into human design. They want to dive into breath work and all that kind of stuff. What's the first thing you would suggest that they do?
I mean, people come at it from different places. Like, I've had people book a full session with me and like get started and then join the collective and like do their own diving. I mean, the reality is too, like, some people just aren't DIY and they don't want to DIY it. They want you to just tell them, in which case I do sessions. That's obviously the most expensive thing on my site because it's time with me. I try to offer so many things in field guides and things where you can like get something that's like personalized for you at an affordable rate, or then there's the collective to dive in. But and then some people come and like start in the collective and then they need a little help like getting on track and they'll book a reading. But it's really like what works for you. If you know, if you can DIY it. I think that 70% of the world has open willpower centers. So some people do have trouble like sticking with things. And I think it can be good to get like an accountability buddy that you like, oh, we're going to like help each other stick with this thing and like create a routine around it or create a time around it. But I have so many ways in there of like, I created a monthly container so that it's like this month we're focusing on this for people who are having trouble with just like the vastness of it, you know, or like a lot of the workshops, like all the chakra workshops, the boundaries workshop, they have like little cards you can print out and like put in a jar and draw a card a day for a practice. You know, I'm always trying to find ways to be like different ways for people to like commit to it. But it should be something, you know, if you're in the collective, it's because you do want to dive deep and you do want to pull threads and go down rabbit holes. If you're not, if you just want the information, then scheduling sessions with me is better, or looking into the field guides and seeing like which field guide you're most interested in.
I just joined the collective and I'm already starting to dive in. So I highly recommend that you do it as well, because I have a lot of late nights ahead, I think.
Really, it's hard not to. Like, I'm like, at some point it will feel complete, but I don't think that's true. Like, I'm always adding stuff. Every month I'm adding something different. So it just keeps kind of growing to be a big resource.
This is brilliant. Well, I have one last question for you, because I ask every one of my guests, because the podcast is called Editing the Future Editing the Future Year, which is all about doing the work now so you can be happy now, but also you happier in the future, clearly. Describe the future you. What would you like to see yourself doing or adding to your collective or living? Or
I will continue to add to the collective. The meeting ground is like the gates portion, and that's what I'm focused on building out right now. And I am studying, I said at the beginning of this, like I'm starting to study some timing techniques just because I kind of want to be able to do some of that. And knowing, like, I'm always studying, and I don't ever call myself an expert. Like, I'm just on the journey with everybody, and I might know a little bit more than this person, and somebody else knows more than I do, you know, and I'm always just trying to like keep peeling back the layers that I think are most interesting and helpful. The other side of that, where I see myself, is on a farm.
Oh, so cool.
Like, what I want. That's kind of what I'm looking for right now in my finding home phase. Like, I have like stages of what I want to create. I would love to eventually have kind of like a wellness space that people can come to and stay.
So cool.
With lots of specifications. Like, I will have the outdoor sauna and the outdoor showers and the outdoor, you know, like I have all these ideas about this like kind of sanctuary I want to create with animals and growing food and kind of a homesteading energy. So that's kind of what I'm focused on, just continuing to learn, continuing to build out resources for people to be their own gurus, and find some land somewhere and get my hands in the earth. Take care of some goats.
Oh my God, that's exactly where I'd like to go to. That's so amazing. I want chickens so bad. I'm like, honey, I just want chickens. He's like, we'll get chickens one day.
I know.
I'm from the chickens.
Love animals. I'm like a big, I don't know if you have gate 19, but gate 19 is like very connected to animals, and there are several gates that are connected to mammals, but gate 19 is like connected to, I'm
curious now.
Like animals being like really nourishing for you. It's also like one of the most sensitive gates. So I'm like the person that's like, this tag is bugging me, like someone cut it out, or like,
oh, me too. Oh my God.
I can't stand any of that stuff. I'm so sensitive.
No, it's funny because, you know, I worked in fashion for 20 years and had 2 brands, kids wear brand and women's wear brand, and a style and still style photo shoots. And I am so anal about dog hair, cat hair, tags, anything. I'm the one that will be there with the scissors and a lint roller. We have 2 cats, so we have cat hair everywhere, but I hate cat hair. I mean, it's unbelievable how bad I have. So I have a big lint roller that I carry everywhere with me, and everyone's like, "Oh my God, she has the lint roller again." I'm like, "Yep." You're not walking out here with cat hair on. You can love the cats, but then I have to hose you down. It's like,
right. That's hilarious.
Oh, anyways, well, thank you very much for your time today. I really, really, really appreciate it. I had so much to learn, and I will link all of your information so people can find you and watch your IGTV videos and about the collective and all that good stuff. And you can also book sessions with Amanda. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me. It was so nice to like face to face with you.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. If you like what you're hearing, please like us, subscribe, and tell your friends. You can follow us on Instagram, The Future Edit. And for more information about my guest and myself, you can head to thefutureedit.com. Until next time, ciao.